Welcome back to Top 5. Title: Blood on the arena floor. The arena loomed like a beast in the night, its concrete walls echoing with the roars of a frenzied crowd, eager for blood and violence. Tonight, the stakes were higher than ever in the infamous "Who Will Win?" tournament. Here, legends clashed, and only the strongest would rise. Among the contenders stood two of the most notorious fighters in the world. Ranked 9, Wolverine, the feral mutant with adamantium claws and a healing factor that defied death, and ranked 24, Catwoman, the agile thief whose cunning and grace had made her a formidable opponent in her own right. The atmosphere was electric as the announcer's voice boomed through the loudspeakers. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first round of the Who Will Win? tournament. In this corner, the unstoppable force of nature, the Wolverine. The crowd erupted in a cacophony of cheers and howls, their excitement palpable as Wolverine stepped into the arena. His muscles coiled like springs, eyes narrowed, reflecting the primal rage that simmered just beneath the surface. He was a predator, ready to unleash hell. And in the opposite corner, the announcer continued, the queen of the night, the mistress of stealth, Catwoman. The cheers shifted to a sultry roar as Catwoman entered, her movements fluid and feline. Dressed in black leather that hugged her curves, she exuded confidence and mischief. She winked at the audience, her emerald eyes sparkling with a mix of playfulness and danger. This wasn't just a fight, it was a game, and she thrived on the thrill of it all. "Let the battle begin," the announcer shouted, and the anticipation in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Without waiting for a signal, Wolverine lunged forward, his claws unsheathed and gleaming in the dim light. Catwoman rolled to the side, her instincts honed from years of evading capture. She sprang to her feet and retaliated with a swift kick aimed at his head. Wolverine caught her leg mid-air, his grip like a vice. "Nice try," he growled, but Catwoman was quick. She twisted out of his grasp, landing gracefully and immediately striking back with a flurry of punches. Each hit landed with precision, her agility allowing her to evade his feral swipes. Wolverine grunted as a punch connected with his jaw, but the pain barely fazed him. He retaliated with a brutal uppercut, catching Catwoman off guard and sending her sprawling backward. The crowd roared with excitement as the fight escalated, the tension palpable in the air. Catwoman, undeterred, flipped back to her feet and reached into her utility belt, pulling out a small device. With a flick of her wrist, she activated a cloud of smoke that engulfed the arena, obscuring her from Wolverine's view. Wolverine growled in frustration, his enhanced senses straining to locate her. "You can't hide forever," he barked, swiping his claws through the smoke, hoping to catch her off guard. The crowd was on the edge of their seats, waiting for the moment Catwoman would strike. From the shadows, she lunged, her whip cracking through the air and wrapping around Wolverine's arm. She pulled with all her strength, attempting to disarm him. But Wolverine's claws sliced through the whip like it was nothing, and he lunged at her, relentless. The two danced a deadly tango, each blow more vicious than the last. Catwoman relied on her agility, darting in and out, while Wolverine's raw power and fury were a force to be reckoned with. Blood soon stained the arena floor as Catwoman landed a deep gash across Wolverine's side, causing him to roar in pain and rage. "Is that all you've got?" he taunted, undeterred by the wound. His healing factor kicked in almost immediately, but the pain only fueled his rage. Catwoman smirked, her confidence unwavering. "Just warming up," she replied, pulling out a pair of razor-sharp daggers. With a flick of her wrist, she lunged at Wolverine, aiming for his throat. Wolverine caught her wrist, his grip like iron, but she twisted out of his grasp, slicing at his midsection. The blades found their mark, and Wolverine staggered back, blood pouring from the new wounds. But he wasn't done yet. With a primal roar, he charged, tackling Catwoman to the ground. They wrestled fiercely, claws and daggers clashing, each fighter refusing to back down. The arena echoed with the sounds of their struggle, a symphony of violence. Wolverine managed to pin Catwoman, his claws poised at her throat. "This ends now," he growled, but Catwoman wasn't finished yet. With a swift motion, she pulled a hidden knife from her ankle holster and plunged it into Wolverine's side. "Not today, furry," she hissed, pushing him off with all her strength. The crowd was on its feet, a cacophony of cheers and gasps. The two combatants were bloodied and battered, but neither was willing to concede. They stood, panting, eyes locked in mutual hatred and respect. In a final, desperate maneuver, Catwoman feigned left, then dove right, aiming to evade Wolverine's lethal slashes. She rolled to her feet and, in one fluid motion, retrieved a hidden dagger from her thigh holster. She lunged at Wolverine, aiming for a decisive blow. But Wolverine was faster. He caught her wrist just before the dagger could reach its target, twisting it painfully until she dropped the weapon. With a swift motion, he headbutted her, the impact sending her sprawling backward. Catwoman fought to regain her footing, but Wolverine was relentless. He charged, tackling her to the ground, pinning her beneath him. "This is it," he growled, his claws poised at her throat, ready to end it all. Catwoman, desperate and determined, looked up at him, her emerald eyes fierce. "You think you can take me down that easily? I'm not done yet." With a surge of strength, she kicked upward, catching him in the stomach and forcing him off balance. Wolverine stumbled back, and in that split second, she rolled to her feet, adrenaline coursing through her veins, and she dashed toward the nearest exit of the arena, seeking a moment to regroup. The crowd roared, a mix of cheers and jeers, as the two fighters exchanged a furious gaze. Wolverine, fueled by a primal rage, pursued her with relentless determination. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through him, heightening his senses and sharpening his instincts. He was a predator, and Catwoman was his prey, but she was no ordinary foe. As Catwoman reached the edge of the arena, she spotted a makeshift barricade stacked with weapons left by previous fighters. Her eyes narrowed with determination. "You're not the only one who can play dirty," she shouted, grabbing a crossbow from the pile. Wolverine charged, but in a flash, Catwoman aimed the weapon at him, pulling the trigger. The bolt whistled through the air, striking Wolverine in the shoulder. He grunted, the pain jolting through him, but he didn't slow down. With a roar, he ripped the bolt out and charged her again, his claws glinting ominously. "Nice shot, but it'll take more than that to stop me," he bellowed. Catwoman quickly dropped the crossbow and rolled to the side, avoiding his lethal swipe. She was back on her feet in an instant, moving with the grace of a dancer, her mind racing for a strategy. She spotted a nearby column and sprinted toward it, using it as cover. Wolverine, relentless in his pursuit, slashed at the column in frustration, but Catwoman was already behind it, waiting for the perfect moment. As he turned to find her, she launched herself from her hiding spot, aiming a powerful kick straight at his chest. The impact knocked him back, but he quickly regained his footing, his eyes wild with fury. "You're going to pay for that," he snarled, lunging again. Catwoman, agile and quick, ducked under his strike, spinning around him and delivering a series of rapid punches. But each time she hit him, Wolverine's healing factor mitigated the damage. He was a walking tank, and every blow seemed to only fuel his ferocity. "Why won't you just stay down?" Catwoman panted, frustration evident in her voice. "Because I'm not done yet." Wolverine roared, launching a wild swipe at her. She narrowly avoided the claws, but the wind from his swing was enough to push her back. The fight had taken its toll on both fighters. Catwoman was breathing heavily, her body slick with sweat and blood, while Wolverine was a living embodiment of rage, his shirt shredded and his body marked with deep gashes. Catwoman realized she needed to change tactics. She turned and dashed toward the barricade again, searching for anything that could give her an advantage. Her fingers brushed against a grappling hook, and an idea sparked. Wolverine was hot on her heels, but as she reached for the hook, she quickly turned and fired it toward a high ledge. The hook latched on, and she began to ascend, using her agility to pull herself up to safety. "Running away, kitty?" Wolverine taunted, watching her climb with a mixture of frustration and admiration. Just taking the high ground, she shot back, reaching the ledge and preparing to leap down onto him. As she descended, Catwoman aimed a powerful kick at Wolverine, but he was ready. He caught her leg mid-air, twisting it and throwing her off balance. She landed hard on the ground, but immediately rolled to her feet, ready to fight back. Wolverine charged again, but this time Catwoman was prepared. She sidestepped, grabbing a metal pipe from the ground and swinging it at his legs. The blow connected, causing him to stumble, and she pressed the advantage, following up with a series of rapid strikes. But Wolverine wasn't just a fighter, he was a survivor. With every hit, his rage intensified. He caught one of her punches and twisted her arm, pushing her back until she was pinned against the arena wall. "Enough games," he snarled, his claws inches from her throat, ready to end it all. Catwoman, her heart racing, felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She had to think fast. With a swift motion, she reached into her belt and activated a small smoke bomb, filling the area with thick, choking smoke. Wolverine, momentarily blinded, swiped wildly, but Catwoman took the opportunity to escape his grasp. She dashed through the haze, her instincts guiding her as she maneuvered around him. "Come on, Logan. You can do better than that," she taunted from the shadows, her voice echoing through the smoke. Wolverine growled, his senses heightened as he tried to pinpoint her location. "I can smell you, Cat," he barked, focusing on the sound of her movements. Suddenly, the smoke began to clear, and Catwoman lunged from the side, aiming to surprise him with a kick. But Wolverine was ready. He caught her mid-air, spinning her around and throwing her to the ground with a ferocious slam. Catwoman gasped as the impact rattled her, but she quickly rolled away, narrowly avoiding his claws. "You're strong, but I'm smarter," she shouted, scrambling to her feet. Wolverine was relentless, charging at her again, and she had no choice but to engage in close combat. They exchanged brutal punches, each hit resonating with the fury of their battle. Catwoman landed a kick to his gut, but Wolverine retaliated with a backhand that sent her sprawling. "Get up, kitty," he jeered, advancing on her. She struggled to her feet, her body screaming in protest, but she wasn't done yet. Gathering her remaining strength, she dashed toward the barricade again, searching for any weapon she could use. Her eyes landed on a heavy chain, and she quickly wrapped it around her fist, preparing for one final confrontation. Wolverine charged, but this time, Catwoman swung the chain at him, catching him across the face. The blow staggered him, and she pressed the attack, using the chain to whip at him, aiming for his legs and torso. "You may be tough, Logan, but I'm not going down without a fight," she shouted, determination fueling her every move. Wolverine roared in frustration as she landed blow after blow. The crowd was on their feet, cheering for the bloodshed, their excitement mounting as the battle reached its climax. But Wolverine was a cornered animal, and he wasn't about to be defeated. With a sudden burst of energy, he charged at her, his claws extended. Catwoman swung the chain again, but he caught it mid-swing, yanking it from her grasp and tossing it aside. In a final, desperate move, Catwoman lunged at him with a punch, but Wolverine caught her fist, twisting it painfully. "This ends now," he growled, his claws poised at her throat once more. Catwoman, feeling the heat of the moment, drew on every ounce of her remaining strength. With a swift motion, she brought her knee up, connecting with his groin. Wolverine's eyes widened in shock, and he staggered back, momentarily stunned. "Not today, Logan," she shouted, seizing the opportunity to regain her footing. She spun around, grabbing a nearby chair and swinging it at him with all her might. The impact echoed through the arena as the chair splintered against his body, but he barely flinched, his rage boiling over. "Enough games," he roared, charging at her again. But Catwoman was quick. As he lunged, she ducked low and rolled beneath his grasp, coming up behind him and delivering a powerful kick to his back. The force sent him crashing into the arena wall, but he quickly turned, eyes blazing with fury. The crowd was electrified, the tension reaching a boiling point. Catwoman and Wolverine faced each other, both bloodied and bruised, but neither willing to back down. "Let's finish this," Wolverine snarled, his claws gleaming under the arena lights. With a nod of fierce determination, Catwoman responded, "I couldn't agree more." In one final clash, they charged at each other, a whirlwind of claws and fists. Catwoman leaped and twisted, attempting to land a decisive blow, but Wolverine was a whirlwind of muscle and fury. Their bodies collided, and the arena erupted in a chorus of cheers as the two fighters unleashed their final attacks. Wolverine slashed, but Catwoman ducked, countering with a brutal punch to his gut. He retaliated with a desperate swipe, and Catwoman narrowly avoided it, spinning around to deliver a series of rapid strikes. But in the chaos, Wolverine managed to catch her wrist again, twisting it painfully as he brought her close. "You're good, Catwoman," he growled, "but this is where it ends." With one final, savage motion, he plunged his claws deep into her side, and Catwoman gasped, shock and pain flashing across her face. Blood spilled from the wound, soaking the ground beneath them. As she staggered back, Catwoman clutched her side, her breath coming in ragged gasps. You think you've won?" she whispered, her voice steady despite the pain. Wolverine stood there, breathing heavily, claws dripping with her blood. The crowd fell silent, the reality of the brutal fight settling in. "You fought well," he said, a hint of respect in his voice. "But you were never going to win this." With a final, defiant glare, Catwoman collapsed to the ground, her body hitting the arena floor with a heavy thud. The crowd, once roaring with excitement, fell into a stunned silence as they processed the brutal climax of the fight. The air was thick with tension, the only sound being Catwoman's labored breaths as she struggled to stay conscious. Wolverine stood over her, a mixture of triumph and remorse in his eyes. He had fought many battles, but this one felt different. There was something about Catwoman that stirred a reluctant admiration within him. "You fought like a warrior," he said, his voice low and gravelly, almost reverent. "You've got guts." But the moment was fleeting. The announcer's voice broke through the silence, booming over the arena's loudspeakers. "And the winner of this brutal first round is Wolverine." The crowd erupted into a chaotic mix of cheers and boos, excitement and horror mingling in the atmosphere. Wolverine stood tall, his claws still extended, blood dripping from the tips, as he gazed down at Catwoman. She was still conscious, her eyes fierce despite the pain, a flicker of defiance shining through. "Get up, Kitty," he urged, a hint of challenge in his tone. "You're not done yet." But Catwoman didn't move. She lay on the ground, her breaths shallow, fighting against the darkness creeping in at the edges of her vision.